I really hate to say this, but people want you to find healthy eating confusing. There are a dizzying number of diet books and diet programs wanting you to try everything. Try intermittent fasting. You need to follow this detox program at least quarterly. A carnivore diet is actually good for you. Give it a chance. None of this is the truth. And not just that, the diet industry actually wants you to fail. The former finance director of Weight Watchers has actually been quoted to say that because only 16% of clients achieve long-lasting weight loss, it's successful because 84% have to come back and do it again. That's where your business comes from. That's shitty. I'm a medical doctor and I could not hate this sentiment anymore. I could not hate diet culture any more than I already do. On this channel, we are not talking about diets. We are not talking about quick fixes to weight loss. We are talking about dietary patterns and habits that promote longevity and reduce the incidence of chronic diseases. If that resonates with you and that's what you're looking for, I would love to have you in my corner of the internet, so please subscribe and follow along. Because it turns out if your goal is to live as long as possible, as well as possible, and prevent chronic diseases, the path forward is actually pretty simple and best of all, free. Oh, we have a guest speaker. So here are my top 5 tips of all time that are backed by actual science and have been so helpful to me personally. First, focus on whole, unprocessed foods. This means eating foods that are as close to their naturally occurring state as possible. Ultra-processed foods, things like packaged cookies, breakfast cereals, candy, chips, soda, fast food, energy bars, wreak havoc on our health. And a surefire way to spot them is by looking at the list of ingredients. And if there are a bunch of things that you would have no way of actually getting in your own kitchen, it's most likely ultra-processed. Ultra-processed foods tend to have high levels of saturated fat, sugar, and salt. And we know from large population trials that the overconsumption of ultra-processed foods directly leads to the development of chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, depression, and even shortens your lifespan. It leads to early death. Now, our goal is not to eliminate them from our diet completely. Perfection is never the goal here. And as we'll talk about later, we are not trying to ban any food from our diet forever unless it's for ethical or religious reasons. I'm not saying that you should never have French fries once in a while because I love to have French fries every once in a while. But what I am saying is that we need to get the majority of our calories from whole, unprocessed foods. And beware, even some packaged foods will look like they're trying to be healthy. They'll say, oh, this is high in calcium, this is high in iron. No, ignore it. We get our nutrients from foods, real foods. And again, the guiding light to eating as many whole, unprocessed foods as possible is to think, is this food in its most natural form or as close as possible to its most natural form? One simple note about grains in particular, it is so health promoting to look for whole, unprocessed grains as opposed to processed grains. So for example, looking for brown rice instead of white rice, or wheat bread where whole wheat is the #1 ingredient versus white bread. And again, because we're not going for perfection, you can mix these in slowly. You can mix brown rice with white rice just to get used to it. It's all a process. It's not perfection. 2, focus on adding more plants, specifically fruits and vegetables, into your diet. We know from science that the more plants that you eat, the healthier you will be. One study that looked at fruit and vegetable intake and its association with the incidence of cardiovascular disease actually showed that each 2.5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day that were added to a diet was associated with an 8% decreased risk of coronary heart disease, a 16% decreased risk of stroke, and a 10% decreased risk of all-cause mortality. And here's the best thing about this study. Although the benefits were seen up to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables that were added per day, the biggest mortality benefit came from going from 0 to 2.5 servings per day, which means that you get the biggest bang for your buck from just starting. I also want to mention that one of the most important things that plants provide to our diet is fiber. Americans are chronically deficient in fiber, which is so important for proper digestion as well as preventing diseases of the digestive system, things like diverticulitis or even colon cancer. We know that Americans are not getting enough fiber and it is leading to disease. The other great thing about plants is their antioxidant content. And antioxidants actually help repair damage from environmental toxins. We cannot get enough of these. And the best way to get them is from whole foods. Some of the top antioxidant-rich foods, aside from acai and goji berries, are artichoke, cinnamon, apple, pomegranate, blueberries, cocoa powder, cranberries, pears, black plum, and pecan. Number 3 is to swap as many animal products for plant products as you can. Plant foods have healthy fats and fiber that is so health promoting for our bodies, and they also tend to be full of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, phytochemicals, and water, whereas animal products tend to have saturated fat and cholesterol, which we don't need need and can be damaging in excess. We know from several huge trials that replacing animal products with a plant-based alternative is associated with lower risk for heart disease, diabetes, certain cancers, and it is tied to increased longevity. In one study of people who had at least one risk for cardiovascular disease, the researchers found that replacing just 3% of calories with plant protein instead of animal protein was linked to a mortality reduction of 34% for red processed meat, 19% for eggs, 12% for unprocessed red meat, 8% for dairy, and 6% for poultry and fish. The last thing I want to emphasize is that there is a hierarchy here. The worst type of animal product is processed red meats. Things like bacon and lunch meats are associated with the most harm for multiple diseases, including cancers and diabetes. So even if you just want to start there by reducing your red processed meats in your diet, that's a huge start. And I am not saying at all that we all should be going vegan. What I am saying is that we should try as much as possible to get more plants and less animals in our diet. That's it. Again, progress, not perfection. Number 4, do not label foods as good or bad. We do not do this here. We do not do this on this channel. We want to get away as much as possible from perfectionist and black and white thinking when it comes to our dietary patterns. Think of some foods as being more nutrient dense and health promoting, and others as being less so. And we have to remember that we don't always just eat foods for their nutritional content alone. And I'm not talking about using food to cope with negative emotions. That's a different story. But what I am talking about is eating culturally relevant foods with your grandparents, for example, or having a piece of cake for a birthday or an anniversary with loved ones. Similarly, I don't want people to think of any food as off limits completely. When we get into an overly restrictive mindset, that tends to backfire. And always remember to tell yourself, I can have more of this tomorrow. This reduces overeating in the moment because you tell yourself, I'm allowed to have this again. I personally have gone through phases in my life where I've been very restrictive. I've told myself, you can't have any sugar. And then I crave chocolate cake. And I end up overeating the chocolate cake way more than what I was actually craving because I knew that the next day it would be off limits. And this was my only chance. The next day I was going to tell myself, no more sugar. So again, the theme here is progress, not perfection. We're not trying to eliminate anything from our diet unless it's for religious or ethical reasons. And number 5 is really quick and simple. It is to make your beverage of choice water. This is going to help digestion, overall hydration, and the more that you drink water instead of sugary, calorie-laden drinks, the better off you'll be. Even beverages that are sold to us as healthy, like juices, have tons of sugar. So if you're thirsty, the drink that you should reach for should be water, plain and simple. And now that we've reached the end, if you remember nothing else from this video, please just remember that the 2 adjectives that describe the healthiest eating pattern known to man according to our current science is whole foods and plant-based. If you're eating for longevity and prevention of chronic diseases, these are the most important things. No diets, no special programs, no aiming for 100% perfection. That will not get you there. And I would love to hear what questions and thoughts you have in the comments. We will be continuing this discussion there. I will meet you there and we can totally talk more. And if this is helpful to you, if you want more videos like this, please follow along and subscribe to my channel.